Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for this Wednesday, April 27th. A look at the upper air charts with the infrared satellite imagery superimposed shows a very active pattern across the Great Basin. The storm system here lifting out into the plain states was the one that affected us with significant rain and mountain snow the last 2 days. It's moved out to the east, but another system is very quickly dropping in across northern California, giving us more stormy conditions as we go towards the end of the week. And another system well off the end of the map could affect us later in the weekend. So with all these active systems moving through, dispersion should be good through the period. And for today's dispersion this afternoon, our ventilation index, areas in white, are excellent dispersion. Moderate dispersion okay in the yellow, but it gets poor once you get into the red. You can see that we do have some issues across central portions of Nevada, stretching into parts of central Utah. Otherwise, not too bad. If we break it down into its individual components, we can see on the left transport winds strongest in the lee of the Sierra and also across southwestern Utah, and pretty decent across most of Idaho, but lighter transport winds across parts of Nevada and into northern Utah as well. And in terms of vertical mixing, the best will be across Utah, especially southern Utah, and also into Idaho. Lower mixing heights given by those bluish and purplish colors across parts of central Nevada and Utah. Now, poking a bit more into tomorrow, on the left, you see that we still have a trough of low pressure kind of centered across parts of the Great Basin. It's a fast-moving low that was over northern California earlier today. It'll bring more clouds given by the green shades and some light to locally moderate precipitation. Snow level should be pretty high, between 7,000 and 8,000 feet in most areas. And on the right, you notice a lot more in the way of white. So excellent overall dispersion, a bit marginal, mainly more due to cloud cover across parts of Utah. Now, as we break that down into its individual components, in terms of ventilation, it's composed of transport winds on the left. See some pretty strong winds coming out of the north across Nevada. On the back side of that low, lighter winds as you head into Utah, except far northern Utah and into Idaho, where winds are fairly strong. And vertical mixing, pretty decent across Idaho, a bit marginal across parts of east central Nevada and parts of adjacent western Utah, but otherwise we see the yellows and oranges. The vertical mixing is pretty good. Now, if we look at Friday, we see that we're still in a broad trough of low pressure. The green shades indicate cloudy, overcast skies and light to occasionally moderate precipitation continuing across the area. On the right-hand side, most areas in the white, so dispersion is looking pretty good. Breaking it down individually, really good transport flow coming out of the north and northwest, especially across the eastern half of Nevada and across most of Utah. A lot better on the vertical mixing. A lot of yellows and oranges are on the map. And for Utah, from the National Weather Service, they produce the Utah Clearing Index, which is another form of smoke transport, both vertically and horizontally. And on today's map, you can see some limitations here across the northern portion of Utah, better as you head further south. And as we go through Thursday and Friday, we see much less of that bluish and purplish shade, a bit more in the yellow, orange, and red, which indicates, if you look at the key, at better overall ventilation. Now, looking at how much precipitation we're expecting as we go through Wednesday through Saturday morning, quite significant across the Great Basin, up to over almost 1.5 inches across parts of northern Nevada, close to 1 inch across the mountains of Idaho, and over 2 inches across some of the higher terrain of central and southern Utah. So a pretty potent system coming through in the short term. Let's look a bit further down the road, looking at Saturday's pattern, and there's that low pressure area on the left here, that counterclockwise circulation still wrapping lots of moisture, especially that darker green shade. That's our highest humidity level. You can see that's confined to the southern half of Utah and Nevada. And on the right, ventilation, as you'd expect under low pressure, very good given by all those areas in the white. On Sunday, that low is semi-stationary across southern Utah, still rotating tons of moisture around into the mountains of Idaho, as well as, again, focusing mostly on southern Nevada and Utah. On the right, Ventilation is excellent. And looking at next Monday, the moisture remains over us. The actual low pressure area starts to basically weaken and dissipate, but the moisture is lingering there a bit, so lots of clouds. Heaviest precipitation by the darkest green may be confined more to parts of Wyoming and up into Idaho. Still good overall dispersion on the right-hand side. And next Tuesday, we see that the moisture moves out. We actually have a broad ridge of high pressure replacing the low that was over us. There is another low pressure system off the coast here, and that could play a role later on. We'll have to watch that. On the right-hand side, as high pressure builds in, you see a bit more yellow and orange, yellow and red, I should say, on the map, where overall dispersion starts going downhill. And looking at precipitation for days 4 through 5, this is basically Saturday through Sunday and into daybreak Monday. You can see that the heaviest amounts will be across our southern areas, lighter as you head further to the north. And looking at precipitation as things start to wind down by next Monday through Wednesday, just some light to locally moderate amounts, mostly across Utah, starting to taper off across Nevada and Idaho. Now looking further down the road, our 8 to 14 day outlook, this takes us from May 4th to May 10th. Temperature-wise, on the above normal side, but more importantly, precipitation still focusing above normal. There's still some more Pacific low-pressure storm systems that are expected to move onshore during our week 2 period, so keeping things cool and moist for this spring. This concludes our briefing. Have a safe day. Our next briefing will be coming up this Monday.